Well, hello there. My name is Nicola Connolly Byrne. I am the personal empowerment specialist, and you are very welcome to my podcast, Soulchats. We normally speak here about people's personal and spiritual development and how they have empowered themselves to do that. But this time, we are shifting gears and we're going to speak about health empowerment and all things perimenopause, menopause, and HRT. I have some amazing guests lined up for you who are going to share their stories about their personal journey and knowledge around HRT or the lack of it. Please bear in mind, we are not medical professionals, so we are not offering medical advice. We just believe in the power of shared learning. So please do speak to a doctor if you feel like you need to. So let's jump right into new territory. Let's get going and buckle your seatbelts. Good morning, Sarah Cox.
Hi, Nicola. How are you?
I'm really good. Sarah, it's really lovely to meet you.
And you. Can you see me okay?
I can see you super clear. I love following all of your stuff on LinkedIn.
Oh, thank you.
I really do. I have to say, I look forward to reading your posts.
Oh, that's great to hear.
And
Sometimes you don't know who's viewing or who's looking at them, and it's helping people. So that's really great to hear.
Well, I'm watching.
Perfect.
And I'm learning.
Good.
So let me give the official introduction for who Sarah Cox actually is. So, Sarah Cox is a menopause coach and women's health expert. She has worked in the corporate world for her whole career prior to leaving at the end of 2021, due partly to perimenopause symptoms. Having lived with this for coming up to a decade and having been on a real roller coaster ride, she wanted to give something back to people going through menopause and share ways to help improve health, diet, exercise, sleep, and mindfulness. So her aim is to raise awareness and educate companies and people about this important topic. So that is a lot, Sarah. That's a lot.
It is, yeah.
Can I ask you a couple of questions about that?
Of course, go for it.
Okay, so at the end of 2021, so that's kind of this time last year?
Yeah, just a little bit earlier, around September time. So, okay. Yeah.
So we're in the last quarter of 2021. We've all lived through the pandemic and we were coming off the back end of that. We didn't know at the time, but we were. And you are experiencing or suffering from, I don't know whether you're experiencing them or suffering from them, perimenopause symptoms.
Yeah.
And can I ask you what age you were last year?
45, so I'm 46 now. So yeah, quite young, relatively young, for being experiencing a decade as well. So yes, that's quite unusual, which I think is another reason that I want to share my story, because perimenopause can go on for 15 years. So average 4 years. But, I think it's good to get all sorts of stories and experiences so that we're just prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. So you and I are the same age. And you are saying that you were going through perimenopause symptoms for 10 years before that?
Yeah.
And were you aware of that at the time or not?
No, I wasn't.
Okay, right. So from a retrospective point of view, tell the audience what life was like before you knew that this was perimenopause.
Yeah, so going back 10 years, it was, it wasn't in the mainstream media. People didn't talk about it. My mum didn't even talk about it. She didn't share any of her experience. So I was really in the dark as to, what to expect. And I didn't even know there was a word, perimenopause. Did you?
Neither did I. You're not on your own.
In fact, I only found that out in probably the last 5 years.
Yes.
So I, like many people, I just assumed menopause was, you have a few hot flushes and, you know, your period stops and that's the end of it.
Yeah.
I was not prepared for the anxiety, the brain fog, the poor concentration, and so many other symptoms. I mean, I think one of my first symptoms was vertigo. I didn't know that at the time, but looking back now, I can see clearly that I had a terrible, terrible bout of vertigo that it took me quite a long time to recover from. And now I realise that was probably the start of my hormones fluctuating. So I went through the first few years just, you know, not really realising what was happening. And I think the symptoms for me really crept up on me. So at first they were probably quite subtle. You know, I'd had the vertigo, yes, my periods were irregular, but that probably wasn't that unusual for me. So, but then, you know, gradually the hot sweats and the night sweats, and I don't know, it just didn't feel myself. I just felt a bit cloudy.
Sarah, everybody keeps saying that to me. Everybody keeps saying, I just didn't feel myself.
It's really hard to describe, but you know, you just don't feel, you feel below par. And as you know, time went on, I had a really stressful job. I worked in the aviation industry. I'd worked my way. I'd spent a good decade, you know, getting myself to director level. Basically, my job come before everything else in my life, which you know, I'm not proud of now.
Okay.
So I had a really high workload, and you know, I was used to like juggling, you know, lots of things. Gradually over the last few years, and I put this down to the pandemic, because obviously we were all very stressed at that point and having to adapt to life.
Absolutely.
So I had this terrible anxiety, and you know, weirdly, I'd always been a really confident driver. But during the pandemic, when the roads were completely empty, and, you know, I had my special letter from my company saying that, you know, if I was found out there driving, you know, it's fine, Sarah's out there, she's allowed to be.
Yeah.
And this overwhelming anxiety just come over me, like, just started to feel shaky, you know, like my hands were like all sweaty and clammy. I could feel this. I felt really lightheaded, and eventually I did have to fall over. But and this happened to me quite a few times, and I haven't related it to my hormones. At the time, it was only on like further reflection and looking at it, research a bit further on. And then I started to, you know, forget things, couldn't remember people's names, like family, friends, you know, people I know really well, work colleagues.
Yes.
And I had quite a young team, and I think I could see they were looking at me thinking, what is going on with her? You know, like
she's crackers.
She's crackers. And, you know, why is she not remembering to do these things that we're asking her to do?
Yes.
So I think all of this combined together, I started to get really quite, you know, insecure.
And you start to second guess yourself, Sarah.
Massively. And it felt really overwhelming, and you know, my self-confidence just started to plummet. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on here? I can't do this job anymore. You know, I've done it for 10 years, I can't do this job anymore. So then that imposter syndrome really crept in, and at that point I think where I've got all these symptoms going on, and because I was stressing about them, I just made them all far much more worse. And it kind of come to a crunch point where I had really bad digestive issues. Have not really suffered with that in the past, but terrible acid reflux. I didn't realize that was a symptom, but it is a symptom. And I had it constantly for about a month, and if you've ever suffered with it, it is horrendous. So eventually I was like, right, I need to get a nutritionist involved and see what the hell is going on. You know, I thought something was really seriously wrong with me. I was going for a test with my doctor. You know, I was waiting for this bad news. Anyway, my nutritionist was lovely. She, you know, went through, did some tests, talked through my diet. You know, we spoke about hormones. And at the end of it, she sat me down and she said, you do realise that it's your menopause symptoms or your perimenopause symptoms that are causing all this. She goes, you're so stressed that basically your body is chronically inflamed. So it's making your symptoms so much worse because you're not dealing with them and you're not treating them. And you need to slow down. So it's at this point I'm like, light bulb moment. Okay, I'm picturing it all together now. And do you know what, Nicola? I thought, I've just got to put myself first. And, you know, at that point, I was like, right, you know, my work weren't very supportive. And
I'm sorry to hear that, Sarah.
Unfortunately, it happens a lot, which is another reason why I help businesses as well as individuals.
Yes.
But at that point, I thought, no, I'm going to put myself first. And I walked away from that job that I loved. And, you know, it's not all negative, because we're here talking today. And, you know, obviously I've gone on to create my own business that helps support this. So, yeah, that was how it affected me.
Can I just go back for a second there, Sarah? Because I actually took a note when you said it. You said my job came first and I'm not proud of that.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So I think this is a really, really valuable lesson for all women.
It really is. Yeah.
If you could jump in a time machine, what would you do differently with regard to your career?
Well, certainly I would have got myself educated in my 20s and 30s, so I was prepared. And I would have spoken to my work about it. And I would have said, look, we need to talk about this, because 51% of the population go through it, but we are all directly and indirectly impacted by it. Mm-hmm. So you think me walking away from that job, they lost all that experience and talent that you can't replace overnight.
Yes. But I suppose the crux of the question that I'm trying to ask, and I don't think I'm asking it clearly enough, is you said that you prioritized your job over everything. If you could go back, would you do that again? Or
no, I certainly wouldn't do that again. And this is, you know, and now my life is much different because of that. So, you know, what I would say to people is you have to put yourself first. And particularly when you're going through perimenopause and your hormones are like fluctuating and all over the place, it's so important that you slow down. We need to slow down, and we need to be in the moment sometimes. And self-care is a massive, massive thing when it comes to going.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
And I think, you know, I look at it from menopause from quite a holistic approach, whereby, you know, mindfulness is fantastic and it can be done anywhere, anytime, doesn't take long.
It's my secret weapon, Sarah. It's the toolbox that I carry on me back every day of the week.
Exactly. But also, Nicola, I used to sit at my desk all day long from the moment I got in early until late in the evening. And then I would come home, quickly rush the food, and, you know, and then I'd probably be back on my phone working. So now, you know, it's important to make time for exercise. I get that not everyone wants a rigid exercise regime, but going for a walk is fantastic for you. It puts you in the moment. You know, look at what's around you, the trees and nature.
Yes.
You know, just taking 10 minutes away can make a huge difference. But also for, you know, our digestive system, you know, sitting there all day, particularly with the symptoms that I've mentioned to do with that kind of area, you know, your bodies aren't meant to sit down all the time. It's really, really bad for us.
It needs movement.
We're sitting crunched over, and, you know, we're not thinking about our posture. So, you know, what I would do differently is I would put the hours in I put in. You don't need to. You need to learn to work smart. I would take a lunch every day and take time away. I would schedule some kind of mindfulness stretching in throughout the day, you know, different periods. And I definitely believe now in kind of working smart, like intense 3-4 hour periods. And then, you know, having those breaks away, like regular breaks. You know, there's some evidence that come out just this week, you know, about Zoom calls back to back and how it fatigues the mind.
Yeah. Have
a break in between. You know, people say they don't have time, but you do have time. We
just don't prioritize our time very well.
We do, exactly. It's all about working smarter.
Yeah. So I'm really pleased that you said there, Sarah, that one thing that you would do differently is put yourself first. Because women in general have this self-sacrificial gene where they think they have to put their careers first, their children first, their marriage first, all them things. And they believe that if they don't, that they're selfish. But I'm flat out saying to people, I'm not in the business of making selfish people. I'm in the business of making self-full people. I'm trying to help women, and I'm constantly banging on about it on social media. Put yourself first. You're the one that's creating the lists. You're the one that's doing the to-dos. You're the one that's taking the action. It's up to you to prioritize you. Nobody's going to come to your door and say, oh, by the way, we think you're amazing, so we're putting you first on the list. That's not happening. That's just not happening. But when we put ourselves first and we become self-full, and our cup is full first, then your cup will overflow. And what's on the saucer is for everybody else. So you can actually give more to your family, to your friends, to your marriage, to your community, to your career when you are fuller.
100%, yeah.
When you're fuller. So I really want the listeners that are listening to you today, Sarah, to just really take that home, because you can't take your career in your coffin.
No, exactly. And that's something we all have to remember. And, you know, 1 in 10 people are like me and they walk away from their jobs. So, you know, we need to find a way that can keep people in their jobs, but they have that balance that they need, you know, to support themselves, and they can have their job. You can have both.
Yes. So you made the decision to walk away from your career that you loved. I'm very sorry to hear that your employer wasn't supportive to you at the time for what you were going through. That makes me really sad, because the only loser here is them.
Exactly.
Because they've lost out on all of your knowledge and your gumption and all of your information and your care for your team. So you walked away, and I'm glad that you did, because clearly their values are not in alignment with your values.
Exactly.
So you walked away, and what next?
So yeah, that's when the exciting part started. So, you know, once I kind of had a bit of time out, focused on myself, and I was like, okay, right, I'm feeling in control now. I know what's going on. And, you know, I'm kind of armed for my next step. So I thought to myself, right, you know, I could go back and do something similar to what I've done before. But there was something inside me that thought, I've been through this experience for a reason. And, you know, I want to prevent others from being in this situation. I want to help people understand what is going on and what they can do to help themselves. So I set up my company, Don't Pause for Menopause. And along with
Can we just say that again? Like, I just love your business name. Don't Pause for Menopause. So clever, Sarah.
I know. Well, it needed to be catchy, and obviously, you know exactly what it means, don't you, when you see that business name? So yeah, you know, that's something.
How did you come up with that?
Do you know what? I have to be honest with you. I can't take the credit. My husband come up with it. He's fantastic. Yeah, he's fantastic at things like that. But yeah, so you know, we were spinning a few ideas of, you know, wanted it to be positive, because if the one thing about menopause, you know, I know obviously it's not all great, but I want to try and put a positive spin on it. So yeah, I hope that kind of comes across in the name as well.
Absolutely. My pal Tony helps me come up with names for products.
Brilliant.
And when I'm stuck, you see, I like to put the word soul into everything. And we were releasing, we were launching a group last year, and I was stuck on the name. I was like, oh, I can't, it's on the tip of my tongue, I can't get it out. So we went for dinner, actually, myself, my husband, Tony, and his wife, Sarah, and Tony just came out with it. He said, it's not Soul Works, it's a little bit less, so it's Soul Steps. I was like, oh my God, it is, it's Soul Steps. So I can't take the credit for that either.
But it doesn't matter, does it? You know, it's, I'm, you know, want to give my husband the credit for that, because you know, he deserves it. But yeah, it's catchy. I like it. It does what it says on the tin, so perfect.
Yeah, well, wonderful.
Yeah, so I set that up early part of this year, and then obviously I've got my own lived experience of a decade. But I also went on to do a CPD accreditation to learn how to really drive it into a business, so that, you know, companies are doing it in the right way, because obviously it's quite a sensitive subject, and, you know, it needs to be handled sensitively and, you know, in the right kind of way. So yeah, I did that, and then obviously from then I've been like building my brand and, you know, trying to get myself out there, as you've seen on LinkedIn, with my posts and share my experience. And, you know, I work with a lot of individuals and companies. They're quite different, but I like that element. And, you know, it's great to see so many people wanted to talk about it, and so many people going, yeah, I've been there, that's me. Oh, you know, it's nice to hear someone else sharing their journey. So
absolutely,
what I intended is getting out there, and obviously it's really, really helping these people to, you know, not have the experience that I had, and you know, learn how they can help themselves. And, you know, more often than not, it's just simple things.
Yeah, and empower themselves to be better. So what's your experience like when you are approaching a company for the first time? Generally, HR is female based. There's always a handful of guys that are sprinkled throughout HR departments in corporates. But what is the temperature of the room like at the moment when you're dealing with businesses?
Do you know what? There are businesses are wanting to help and support this. I think they're realizing now, because it's, you know, becoming a topic that's talked about a lot more now. You know, I think we're all seeing that everywhere. And, you know, if a company's got a really good culture and they want to do the best for their employees, then they will be supporting this. And, you know, there's a real appetite for it. And businesses don't always know how to embed it, and, you know, how to start that conversation internally. So generally, what I find with my clients is it starts with having a lunch and learn, or a webinar, or a podcast. And, you know, I've done lots of these for different companies, and it depends on the culture of the company, you know, and what they think works best for their employees. And that's just dipping your toe in the water. And so, you know, you're basically saying gently, you know, we're supporting this now. Let's see, you know, how people want to engage with that. And then once people realize, oh, actually, the company do want to support me, then, you know, they start to look at, okay, how can we train our managers to have those conversations, to, you know, recognize symptoms, understand if someone's struggling, because not everybody, like me, knows they're going through that.
Exactly.
Transition.
When you don't know you're going through it, you know there's something wrong, but you don't know what it is.
Exactly.
It's a very scary space to be in.
It is a scary space to be in, but also, you know, behaviours can change due to some of your symptoms. And managers might look and think, Sarah's not acting herself today, or hasn't been acting herself, you know, and they could see that negatively. But actually, if they're trained to understand, they could go, actually, perhaps it could be perimenopause, and perhaps Sarah doesn't realise that she's going through it. So it's helping to support your colleagues in, you know, all sorts of ways, but also signposting, you know, again, common symptoms, you know, have that available, have that information there, so people can look at that and think, okay, this could perhaps be me, you know, I'm going to look into this further. It's just all about raising awareness. And, you know, there's wellbeing champions in a lot of companies now. Train them to know, you know, more about menopause symptoms and how they can help people. But also it's making little adjustments in the working environment can make a big difference. You know, for instance, hot flushes, that was a major thing for me. Have a temperature controlled environment. If not, let them have a desk fan. That can make such a big difference to somebody.
Yes, that was my next question. What are businesses doing on a practical, in a practical way for women? Like what changes are they making?
There are so many changes that they can make, and, you know, reasonable changes as well. We're not talking expensive or, you know, out there kind of changes. So, you know, the kind of things that I'm seeing businesses implement are sanitary products, have them available, if not in the bathroom or the, you know, the toilets, have a well-being person or somebody that, you know, has access to them, and then should somebody need them, they know where to go. Because I've been caught many a time, you know, with a period arriving from nowhere, and you're not prepared. So, you know, we've all been there at some point, I think, anyway. But also, it's, you know, like the ventilation and the heating, like I touched on earlier, cold drinking water, you know, that makes a big difference. And, you know, but some people don't have access to that, which, you know, is quite unfortunate. You know, when it comes to things like brain fog, allow people to have focused times. You know, these back-to-back meetings are not good for people anyway, let alone when, you know, their mind's foggy. You know, make sure they have those breaks. Have those quiet areas where people can have time away from distractions, or, you know, if it's a noisy office, let them wear earphones. But also, I try and encourage like walk and talk meetings. So if you're having just a general catch up, you know, both get outside, you know, go and help both of you, you know, mentally and physically, but also you're having that, you know, that catch up at the same time. So flexible working is another massive thing, and we've got the pandemic to thank for that. It allows people to work around their symptoms. You know, if they're having a really heavy period, and they can't physically leave the house that day, which does happen sometimes, you know, let them work from home. That way, that if they're happy to work and well enough to work, they're still giving you that time, but, you know, they're in the benefit of their own home, and, you know, they don't need to think about going out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So what is next for you, Sarah? What are your plans now going forward for working with more corporates and working with individuals?
Yeah, so, well, things are just like going from strength to strength. So you know, I'm doing quite a lot of speaker events, or I have done a lot already, and there's more coming up, whereby, you know, obviously it's raising awareness and helping companies and people to understand how they can help themselves and each other. And I'm going to do some digital courses. So I mean, digital seems to be the way forward, doesn't it? And again, I'm trying to incorporate things so there's something for everybody.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you did some digital courses, because I digitized all of my courses.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
And there's only one of me.
Exactly.
I can't be in all the rooms. So yeah, we decided in the last 2 years to digitize everything. So everything that I know is now on video.
Yeah, it's brilliant. But also I'm doing more cafes. So I'm doing one next week with a local beauty company. We got different speakers, and I just happen to be one of them. But again, it's raising that awareness, you know, and this is to individuals, people like you and me that had no idea what was going on and want to help support themselves. And, you know, things are adapting all the time. You know, I train people to become menopause wellbeing champions and coaches like myself. You know, they can go on to do their own business. So, you know, really, there's so many things around menopause, and I'm kind of trying to touch all of those areas because everybody wants something different. But, you know, I also create bespoke solutions if a company in particular, you know, has a unique idea and they think, oh, actually, we want to do this. So, you know, it's just about being flexible and getting that word out there, however we do that.
So there'll definitely be some HR people listening to this. What advice or tips or tricks would you give anybody who is in the corporate space who hasn't yet supported their females in any way, shape or form with regards to this? What advice would you give to them to get them on board?
My advice to them would be, you know, you do need to support it. Every business needs to support it. We've already looked at, you know, spoken about the fact that half the population go through it, but we're all impacted, you know, by friends, colleagues, family. You know, I do think that menopause will be protected under the law at some point in the future. And, you know, not to put a negative spin on it, but tribunals are rising, and you know, we have to bear that in mind. So, you know, start by dipping your toe in the water and getting that conversation going. And, you know, to really get it embedded in an organization, you know, you don't want a tick box exercise where you've created a policy.
Useless, Sarah.
You totally useless. And if you've seen some of my posts, you'll see a recent one about this. And, you know, I couldn't believe how many people said their companies just did this tick box exercise and that was the end of it. So yeah, you need to fully embed it, and you need that buy-in from senior management and leadership, because without that,
it's like wellness days.
It is like wellness days.
You know, every day has to have wellness in it, not just on one day a year so you can tick the box and put the social media post out there. All businesses need to participate in this daily. So in all of your research in the last 12 months in particular, and when you're working with businesses, what is the craziest statistic that you've come across where you've just had your mind blown, where you're just like, I can't believe that number?
Well, 40 million days in the UK are lost every year to menopause related sickness. That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Oh, so, my God.
Yeah, that was a really, really, really crazy.
I just got shivers there up my legs when you said that.
I know.
That's an incomparable amount of time.
But that's just in the UK. Think about around the world. You know,
yes.
Businesses won't even realise this because their employees probably not even telling them that they're off due to their menopause symptoms because they're embarrassed. But those days could be saved if we talked about it. It goes back to that flexible working, and you know,
but also that person might not realise the reason why they're taking the sick day. They just think they just think, oh, I don't know what's wrong with me. And again, if the companies are educating their women, then they will have a positive knock-on effect with regard to productivity and the output. So it really is within all businesses' best interest for their people and for their profits to invest time and money into this.
It really is. And, you know, it really does affect their bottom line in a really positive way, you know, but, you know, first and foremost, employees' health and well-being should, you know, it should be the most important thing, shouldn't it? Because we all know if, you know, our staff are happy and, you know, they're supported, then they're going to be more productive. You know, they're going to want to stay with you as a company, and you can attract new talent. So who doesn't want that? I would definitely, if I was looking now to go and get a new job, I would most definitely want to know that they supported menopause.
Yes, absolutely. We need to start asking these questions.
Absolutely. And do you know, it was interesting. I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago with some American companies, and they do a lot of recruitment, and they were asking me how they could make the recruitment process for menopausal people more inclusive. And I thought, wow, how forward thinking is that? You know?
That's fantastic. Fantastic.
It really is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's people before processes. I'm flat out saying that. People before processes all the time. You have to choose your people. When you're good to your people are good to you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Sarah, where can we find you? If anybody in Ireland wants to hire you to speak, where can we find you?
You can find me obviously on my website, www.don'tpauseformenopause. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me on there. I'm not currently on any other social media at the moment, but it's all a bit new to me, social media, since doing this. So I will branch out at some point, but also hopefully through you as well, Nicola. You can hopefully share my contact details.
Absolutely. Yeah, of course I will. I will definitely put them attached to this podcast. So Sarah, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for your time. It was so interesting speaking to you from a corporate point of view with your own experience, and it's just so wonderful that you've taken all of that and you're bringing it back into corporates now to help the women that you deserved to have that help when it was your turn for coming up through the ranks. But we all need to be mavericks at some point in our life, And I think that you are going to and are advocating and being a maverick for other women coming behind you. So for that, I'm very grateful that you're in my ward.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today. And, you know, if it helps one person, then it's worthwhile.
Absolutely. Sarah, have a fantastic day.
And you. Thanks, Nicola.
Take it easy, honey. Slán.
Bye.
So, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that podcast as much as I enjoyed recording it. If this is something that you're interested in, keep an eye out for future podcasts or the previous ones that I've just released. And if you would like to continue your personal or spiritual development journey with me, I would be absolutely delighted to have you, and so would my team. Check out my website, nicolaconnollyburn.com, and go to the personal development section and fill in the forms and join one of the groups, either Soul Steps or Soul Works. We'll see you there. Take it easy. Slán.